So good evening to everyone that's watching from all over the world, including from Malaysia. Hello, Zar. Okay, so tonight's class, as always, is in the memory of Yitzchak Tzvi and Yosef. His neshama should have an elevation. Tonight we are going to talk about Reuven, but I'm going to talk about a certain kind of character, a certain person that some people here and some people watching online may not personally relate to, but I know that some other people watching will deeply relate and connect to the kind of person I'm going to describe tonight. Because not everyone is the kind of person that Reuven was. And so I'm going to talk about his personality, his nature, who he was, what kind of a person he was. There are some people who will deeply say, wow, that's me. I can so relate. I can so imagine myself in that kind of feeling that way and being that kind of a person that I think they're going to really. And obviously that's the point, to find the me in the Bible. And tonight we'll also discover the danger of that kind of me. So let's start from the beginning. Hello, everyone that's watching. Hello, Kim, and hello, Michael. And hello, I hope you feel better, for Shlema. Hello, Gail from 26 degrees in New York, Pennsylvania. Of course, the people watching from Arizona. Good evening from California. Shalom from San Diego, California. I love it. They're in California. I don't know, is California cold? They didn't get the cold from California, right? They were safe. Yeah. They could see me in Israel. I don't know if anyone in Israel is watching me, but they could. They could see from all over the world. And the point is, yesterday I was told that yesterday was the coldest day in 11 years in Florida. Coldest day. I mean, you have nights that are getting colder, but to stay that cold during the daytime hours, coldest day in 11 years. Okay, anyway, let's get to the class. Let's talk about Reuven. Now, Reuven, my friends, is the most sensitive and the most righteous, except for Yosef, who's different, of all of the sons of Jacob, of all of the 12 tribes. The one that comes across in the Torah as the most spiritually sensitive and the most emotionally sensitive, that's two different things, and Reuven has them both, is absolutely going to be Reuven. And already from a very young age, we see how Reuven deeply feels the pain of other people. You know, there's some people there, what they call in English empaths, right? An empath. What's an empath? They walk into a room and they just feel all the emotion in the room. And they talk to someone and immediately they feel the other person's pain and they feel the other person's anxiety, etc. They just naturally are emotionally sensitive creatures who are emotionally in tune to the people around them. They feel the pain of others. They emotionally connect to the pain of others. And that is the story of Reuven already from a very young age. Okay, the first story we have of the life of Reuven is when he's only, you ready for this? You know how old he is? You want to guess? According to the Lekach Tov, the story we're going to read is when he's only 4 years old. He's a young boy. He can't be more than 5 or 6, for sure not, because it's before Yosef is born. The Torah tells us, chapter 30, verse 14. For those that are watching on my personal page, you can see the text. It's verse 14. Leah, just some context, Leah already had 4 sons. She stopped having children. Right? Remember the story? She stopped having children. And then the Torah tells us that Reuven went in the days of the wheat harvest and he found dudaim in the field. Dudaim is a kind of flower. Jasmine, mandrakes, many different commentaries, interpretations. What? I don't know. No. Finds dudaim in the field and brought them to Leah, his mother. And Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's dudaim. And we know the response, right? How does Leah respond? She says, it's bad enough that you already took my husband. Now you also want the love of my child. So I'm not going to give you my son's dudaim flowers. And Rachel says, I'll let you sleep, take my turn, where you can sleep with Yaakov instead of me in exchange for the flowers. She gives the flowers. And that is the night when Leah becomes pregnant again with child number 5, who is child Yisachar. What are these dudaim? There's a very beautiful, very interesting commentary that tells us that the dudaim flowers were actually flowers that helped fertility. Beautiful commentary. More than one commentary. That these are flowers that help with the fertility of a mother. So You have to let's spend a moment to appreciate the unbelievable expression of the character of Reuven in this story. He's a young boy. According to the Medrash, he's 4. Maybe he was 5, 6 maximum. It was before Yosef was born. He's a young child. His mother probably didn't tell her 4-year-old boy, I feel bad, I feel sad that I had 4 kids and I'm not having more children. Reuven, on his own, is such an empath. He has such a sense of sensitivity and ability to feel the emotions of his mother that on his own he feels his mother's pain of no longer being fertile, no longer having becoming pregnant. On his own, unprompted, told to, he goes out, he finds flowers that will help, that are an herb, that help with fertility, and he goes to give his mother this herb for fertility, which would explain why Rachel wants the flowers so much. Why does Rachel want them? They're flowers that help with fertility. Rachel is struggling, she hasn't had any children. So that's why Rachel wants them. And when Leah gives the medicine, the whatever I want to call it, IVF, saying she gives the pregnancy medicine, the fertility medicine to Rachel, God gives her the ability to become pregnant and she has a child. But I share this story. It's the first example we see of how sensitive, how emotionally sensitive Reuven is to be able to know what his mother needs and to go out searching for flowers for his mother. Of course he loves her. What's the second story where we see the tremendous sensitivity of Reuven? Yes. So the second time we see his sensitivity is after Rachel passes away. Now, Yaakov's primary tent, he slept in all the tents of all the 4 wives, but his primary place was in the tent of Rachel. When Rachel passed away, Yaakov moves his bed from the tent of Rachel to the tent of, Yaakov moved his bed to the tent of Bilhah, who was the maid of Rachel. Now, when Reuven saw this, Reuven could not handle this affront to his mother's dignity. So what happens? The Torah tells us, and if you look in the side of the text that you have in front of you, for those in the room, chapter 35, verse 22, and it came to pass when Israel sojourned in that land that Reuven went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard of it, and so the sons of Jacob were 12. What's the story that he lay with it? The way the text simply reads is that Reuven laid with his father's concubine. That Reuven was intimate with Bilhah. So Rashi right away tells us, or the Talmud tells us, that Reuven disarranged his father's bed. He moved, also a young boy, 10 years old. He moved the bed of his father. He got himself involved in his father's private, intimate marital affairs. He goes into his stepmother's bedroom, takes his father's bed and moves it from his stepmother's bedroom to his mother's bedroom, his mother's tent. And because the Shekhinah rests upon the bed of Yaakov, by moving it, he moved the Shekhinah, and the Torah considers it as if he had been intimate with Bilhah. Now, why did he actually go and move the bed? So Rashi tells us, because when Rachel died, Jacob took his bed, which had been in the tent of Rachel, and moved it to Bilhah's tent, and Reuven came and protested his mother's humiliation. He said, if my mother's sister was a rival to my mother, should my mother's sister's handmaid also be a rival to my mother? For this reason, he disarranged it. Do you see what a sensitive person he is? He feels ashamed. 1 second. He feels ashamed of his mother in comparison to the maid. For a boy, for a young child to realize how his mother feels shame in comparison to the maid requires tremendous emotional sensitivity. On his own. Torah continues. The sons of Jacob were 12. Why does the verse say that he lay with his mother, the maid, and there were 12 sons? Our sages interpreted these words to teach us that all of them, meaning all 12 of Jacob's sons, were equal, and all of them were righteous. Shalaychat Reuven, that Reuven had not sinned when he moved the bed. Okay? I try. 1 second. Shalom, everyone that's watching us from all over the world. Okay. So you understand what's going on over here? The Torah is telling us that the sons of Leah were Reuven, Jacob's firstborn, and then Shimon and Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zvulun. What do we see over here? The Torah not only goes out of its way to tell you that all 12 sons of Jacob were righteous, the Torah even then explicitly mentions that who was the firstborn of Yaakov? Reuven. So again, we're seeing something over here unbelievable. Reuven has a tremendous sensitivity to his mother's emotional state. So much so he moves his father's bed in an act that's considered a sin. But yet the Torah makes a point of deliberately mentioning that there's 12 sons and that Reuven is the eldest and the Bachar, the firstborn of the sons, in order to prevent a person from thinking that Reuven had done something wrong. Should know his motives were noble. His intentions were pure. Beautiful story. Let's go to another story. The third story. What's the third story where we see the inner greatness and sensitivity that Yosef has to another person in pain? Anyone know? The smart woman over here, you're looking to the next page. Yeah, look ahead. What's the next story? So the next story, my friends, also a very, very... are you guys hearing... I hope online that on Chabad.org they're hearing the are you guys hearing me well on Chabad.org? Oh, I'm hearing. Okay, so I guess they're hearing me. Okay, I hope you all hearing me well on Chabad.org. If you're hearing me, let me know. Okay, so the third story that we're going to read about Reuven, this emotional empath, this person who's so sensitive to the pain of somebody else, is the story of Yosef. What's the story with Yosef? I don't know if they're hearing me well on Chabad.org. Yes, Michael, you hear me? Okay, good. Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you for confirming that. Okay, so the third story is, we all know the story, one of the most famous stories in all of the Torah. Yaakov tells his son Yosef, go to see your brothers. They went to go take care of the sheep in Shechem. Go and check on them. Now, Yosef knows that going to see his brothers in Shechem is dangerous. He's quite aware that his brothers hate him. He wasn't stupid. That he was not. But he was going to do whatever his father told him. So Yosef follows instructions. He travels to Shechem. They're not there. He comes to Dosan. And there the Torah tells us that what happened? What happened? The brothers see the dreamer coming. And one brother, which is Shimon, says to his brother Levi, look, the Baal HaChalomos, the master of the dreams is coming. Let's kill him and let's see what will be with his dreams, right? That's the story. What happens next? What happens next? What happens next is, let me go get the text. Reuven speaks up to his brothers. And Reuven says to his brothers, look at this text. So this is, one second, here we go. This is chapter 37, verse 21. But Reuven heard, says the Torah, Reuven heard the plan of the brothers to kill Yosef. And he saved him from their hands. And he said, let us not deal him a deadly blow. Let's not kill him directly with our hands. And Reuven said to them, do not shed blood. Cast him into this pit, which is in the desert, but do not lay a hand upon him, in order to save him from their hands, to return him to his father. Let me explain to you this amazing verse. Reuven, first of all, is saying, don't be the ones to kill him. To kill him, you got blood on your hands. Better put him into the pit, and there he'll die of hunger, he'll die of thirst, the animals will eat him, the scorpions will kill him, but at least the scorpions will be the ones that killed him instead of you directly killing him. But here the Torah says something amazing. Why does Reuven say to them, do not shed blood, cast him into the pit in the desert? Says the Torah, in order to save him from their hands, to return him to his father. There may be, I'm not familiar, there's maybe a handful of places in all of Torah where the Torah tells us the emotional reason, the motivation, what someone was thinking. Think about any story in the Torah. The Torah always tells us what people did, what they said. The story in between the story, like the story behind the story or in between the lines, you read the Medrash, you read the commentaries, and you get that there was a dialogue and there was a back and there was a forth. Very, very rarely do we find where the Torah explicitly takes time to tell us what was the reason why the person said what they said. What was the inner thought process behind their action? It's extremely rare. I don't want to say it's the only time because I can't say it for a fact, but it is extremely rare that the Torah would ever tell you why someone did what they did. What was the motivation? What were they thinking? So he said one thing. He said, don't kill him with your hands, let him die in the pit. It may sound like he's doing something not so great. So God himself in the Torah is coming and testifying to us and telling us, you should know that his motives, tremendously pure. His motives were excellent. His motives were in order to save his life, to go back later. His plan was that later that night, when everyone was sleeping, he would go and he would take him out of the pit and return him back to his father. Can you imagine? So Yosef is being thrown into the pit. All the brothers want to kill him. The only one with the sensitivity and the maturity to recognize that this is wrong and I need to save my brother's life is Reuven. And the Torah even tells us, you should know that his thoughts were pure, his intentions were in order to save his brother. Tremendous. Right? And by the way, this idea that Reuven is a person who's sensitive to the needs of his others, you see it even in the name of Reuven. What is the name of Reuven? Why does Leah, the mother of Reuven, call him Reuven? Let's see who knows. Why is Reuven called Reuven? I didn't copy the Rashi in the paper. Who knows? What's the reason? Why is Reuven called Reuven? Exactly, very good. Reuven in the class, Robert, Reuven is correct. So the reason why his name is Reuven is because Leah says, prophetically, I see the difference, Ru'u, see, Bain, between, the difference between my firstborn and the firstborn of my father-in-law. Firstborn of my father-in-law is Esav. Esav wanted to kill Yaakov, right? Yaakov bought the rights to the firstborn, and yet when Yaakov gets the blessing of the firstborn, Esav wants to kill him out of jealousy. My firstborn, Reuven, not only will he not be jealous of the fact that Yosef will end up getting a double portion instead of him, Menashe and Ephraim, the two sons of Yosef, will become two tribes in Israel, meaning the double portion will go to the family of Yosef, the firstborn of Rachel, and not to Reuven, the firstborn of Leah. And yet, look at the difference that even though Yosef will get the double portion, my son, not only will he not be jealous, he will do anything he can to save his half-brother. So the very name Reuven expresses this idea of seeing the righteousness, of seeing the sensitivity of Reuven, that he's willing to give everything he has to save the life and defend the person that took away a double privilege that would have been his. Again, can you think of a more righteous, holy person like that than this? No. Hope you're following Laura. It's a pretty simple story. Here's a boy, to recap. Laura says she can't follow the story. Here's a boy who, when he was born, his mother prophetically says, this will be a boy who will never be jealous of his brother. He'll help him, he'll defend him. When he's 4 or 5 years old, he's getting medicine for his mother so she can become pregnant. When he's a few years older, he's defending his mother's honor by moving his father's bed into his mother's bedroom. When he's a little bit older, he sees Yosef being sold as being threatened with death. And the Torah itself comes to tell us that his intentions are pure and noble. And he decides to personally intervene, to do what he can, to have him not be killed so later he could save him secretly and bring him back in the middle of the night, bring him back to his father. All of this is amazing story, correct? We all agree? So, why is the name weary? Leah. Oh, so Leah and Rachel is the good question. Leah, but tonight's the class is not about Leah, so we're not going to go off subject. Maybe after we can discuss it. Okay. So now I have a question. If this is true, before the question, sorry. I'm going to tell you something amazing now in Kabbalah. Amazing. In Kabbalah, it explains, and the Ar HaChaim brings this, why is it that Reuven is so connected to Yosef, that Reuven feels a connection to Yosef, and why Reuven is never comfortable being himself. Why he's always searching. Why is he always searching? You ready for something amazing? You probably heard me teach this before, but it's still amazing. We know Kabbalah teaches us that when parents are intimate, when parents are having sex before they give birth to a child, the thoughts of the parents are critical in creating the body, not just the physical flesh of the body, but the emotional psyche and the emotional mentality and the emotional mindset of the child. Right? Every single one of us has a soul. The soul is direct from God. So what kind of soul your child is going to get, you have, as a parent, you have no control over the neshama, the soul God will choose to give you. Some of us will go holier souls, different struggles of souls. But the vehicle of the soul, the body, the garment of the soul, that we create, this idea is Ran and Tanya, this we create through our own thought in our intimacy. So the physical act of intimacy creates the physical body, and the spiritual thought process or the emotional feelings of love and connection and bonding and care that exists, of holiness that exists between the parents at the moment of intimacy is directly what creates the emotional and mental capabilities and personality of the child, of the body of the child, that will be a vehicle for the soul of the child. Now, based on that, we find something absolutely amazing about Reuven. Before Yaakov passes away, Yaakov calls all of his children and says, "Come, my sons, I want to bless you before I die." Right? Next week's Torah reading. Chapter 49, verse 3. Yaakov calls his sons together and he says to Reuven, to his firstborn son, Reuven, B'chayri ata, you are my firstborn. You are my strength and the first of my might. You should have been superior in rank and superior in power, but you lost it because you were like a raging river. You couldn't control your emotions, etc. What does it mean when Yaakov says to his son, you are the first of my might? Do you know what that means? Rashi tells us the first of my might, that is his first drop of semen, for he had never experienced a nocturnal emission. Yaakov was 84 when he got married. Never once in his life did he ever emit semen before he got married, which is obviously a tremendous level of holiness. To never, ever, ever emit not one drop of semen without being intimate with a woman, which didn't happen until they got married. And so Reuven was conceived from the very first night that Yaakov ever gave forth semen out of his body. Now, my friends, pay attention. When was the first night? You ready for this? Roseanne, you ready? When was the first night that Yaakov gave forth semen? When he married Leah, thinking he was marrying Rachel. So when Yaakov was intimate with Leah that first night, the night that Reuven was conceived, what was in his mind? Rachel. So he was physically intimate with one person, but his mind, his heart, his emotions, his feelings of love were being directed to another person, to Rachel. And therefore the child born from that conception is an eternally and deeply conflicted child. A child who psychologically never finds peace in his own skin. If you want to know why Reuven is a person who never feels comfortable who he is always so searching and yearning and so aware of the pain and feelings of others, is because Reuven does not feel comfortable in his own skin. He understands that he feels something is wrong. Like, I'm not who I look like. He walks into a room. Some people feel very comfortable in their skin, and some people can never, ever feel comfortable. They never find themselves. They always feel like something is not authentic about themselves. They struggle deeply. As I said at the beginning of the class, some people can't relate to this, and some people can relate to this very, very deeply. They struggle with identity. They struggle with a sense of self. Deeply struggle. deeply, deeply struggle trying to feel comfortable in who they are, comfortable in their own identity. Reuven never found comfort in his own identity, in his own sense. There's a permanent sense of unease that exists within him. And that's why he's so in tune to the pain of others. Because he's so not himself, he's so not self in his own, he's so not comfortable in his own skin, he's so sensitive to the pain and the emotions and the struggles and the anxiety and the sadness and the loneliness of all the people he interacts with. So true. Okay, Billy says so true. And this explains why Reuven's constantly trying to do teshuvah. Why Reuven is constantly trying to repent and become a better human being. I'm going to get to the story. Reuven is described in the Medrash as the first person to run to do teshuvah, to do repentance. There's others, but it's described as the first one. Why? Because a person that's comfortable with who they are doesn't feel the need to change. If you're comfortable with yourself, you're kind of in a healthy sense of self. I'm good. I feel no need to change. But when a person is constantly in a sense of unease, person is constantly because a person is constantly in a sense of tremendous unease and feels insecure in their own identity, they're always trying to become better. They're always trying to be a little holier, a little bit more spiritual, because they're hoping to find themselves. They're hoping to find belonging, a sense of connection, a sense of identity. So now we understand why Reuven is so emotionally sensitive. He was conceived from a dishonest, so to say, union where the thoughts of his father was not for his mother. So he's connected to Yosef, but he feels he's not who he's not who he's meant to be. He's really someone else. He feels like an imposter in his own skin, and therefore he's constantly feeling the feelings of others, constantly in touch to everyone around him, because it's not about me, it's about everyone else. So why does Reuven not become the leader of the Jewish people? For the last half hour, I have been describing to you sounds of the error. Person who's so sensitive to others, other people's pain. He feels his mother's pain. He brings her flowers of fertility, moves his father's bed. Person who's always wanting to do teshuvah. A person who spends, we're going to discuss the next story, a person who's constantly praying, fasting, sackcloth. He spends years and years and years trying to atone for the sins that he's done in the past. Many years he spends his whole life trying to atone for the sin of having moved his father's bed. So if so, I ask you all my friends that are watching a question. Why does he not become the next leader of the Jewish people? So Michael says online he was too meek, and that's correct. He did not have the leadership qualities of Yehuda, who was much more brave, like a lion. That's true. And God willing, next week's class, I'm going to talk about Yehuda, who does become the leader of the Jewish people. The King David dynasty is from Yehuda. And Michael, I hope you'll join us next Monday, 8 o'clock p.m. And we'll talk about Yehuda and the leadership qualities of Yehuda. But the question still stands, despite the fact that he was too meek. In Judaism, what's wrong with a meek leader who's holy and righteous and spiritual and sensitive? Wouldn't we want a leader that's spiritual and holy? We want convincing, okay. I'm looking online on the other comments. This is gold. Well, thank you, Daniel. You're a tzaddik. I appreciate the kind words. Do you understand the question? Reuven is so righteous. I'm going to tell you now a story that Reuven did tshuva his entire life. A person who's never satisfied with his previous repentance, constantly looking to become better and holier and more righteous. So why does Reuven not become the leader of the Jews? Why does he lose his firstborn rights? Why is he not the hero of Jewish literature? He's not. The hero is Yehuda. We'll talk about next week. We'll talk about Yehuda. So I'm going to tell you only half of a story now. But why is it that Yehuda gets all the credit? Why is Reuven not considered our role model? And why is he not a leader? You're right. He's not a leader. And next week I'll describe what is a leader. But why is Reuven not a leader? He's holy. He's sensitive. He's righteous. The Torah, not only is he righteous, he's so righteous, the Torah takes extra verses and extra words to tell me that he's the firstborn of Yaakov. Don't think he sinned. The Talmud says, whoever says that Reuven sinned makes a mistake. But the Talmud takes time to tell you that Reuven didn't sin. So if the Talmud's telling me he didn't sin, he's righteous. The Torah goes out of its way to tell me that when Reuven said to his brothers, let's not kill him, the Torah is explicitly, not in the commentary in the Medrash, the actual text of the Bible is telling me that he was righteous. So why is he not the leader? Why is he not the hero? Judaism is into righteous people, are we not? It's a good question. Michael says a leader has to make hard choices for all the different Michael has to make hard choices for all the people. That's also true, and we'll talk about the hard choices when we talk about Yehuda next week. And Leah says too much righteousness is not good. Okay. What do I think? I'm going to tell you what the Rebbe thinks. What I think is not important. I'll tell you how the Rebbe explains it. His behavior angered Jacob is true, but why? So here, my friends, let's continue the story. Yosef is coming to the brothers to check on them. What happens? One says to the other, here's the dreamer coming, right? Let's throw him into the pit. Let's kill him. And Reuven says, don't kill him, throw him in the pit. What happens next? What happens next, Vora? Well, so they're sitting down to eat a meal. They're oblivious to the cries of Yosef. Along comes a band of Yishmaelim, of Ishmaelites. And then, first it was Midianites and Ishmaelites. And they sell him for 20 silver coins. And then he gets sold again. And eventually he makes it to Egypt and sold as a slave. Then what happens? Reuven wasn't there. All of a sudden, Reuven comes back and he says, holy moly, what happened over here? Text number 5, chapter 37, verse 29. And Reuven returned to the pit, and lo and behold, Joseph was not in the pit. So he rent his garments, he tore his garments, he did kriya. He tore his garments in grief. Says Rashi, where was Reuven when Joseph was being sold? He was not there. Where was he? So first Rashi tells us it was his day to go and serve his father. So he had gone to serve his father while he left his brother in the pit. Said, okay, he's safe in the pit, even though the snakes and scorpions there. I'm not sure how safe he was. I'm going to go over to my father and I'll come back and I'll find. Another explanation tells us Rashi, he was busy with his sackcloth and his fasting for disarranging his father's bed. You understand what happened over here? Yosef is sitting in the pits, crying his heart out, save me, save me. And where's Reuven? He's praying. He's fasting. Why is he fasting? Because some 10, 12, 15 years before, I'm not sure how many years before, 17, 9 years, I think 9 years before, when he moved his father's bed, he had sinned against his father. And so now it's 9 years later. And what's first and foremost on Reuven's mind? I need to do teshuvah. I need to repent. I need to fast because because I did a sin. You understand? The boy is in the pit crying. And he's busy fasting. Priority is wrong. But let's read the next verse. It's going to get much worse. It's going to get much worse, my friends. Read the very next verse, verse 30. And he returned to his brothers and he said, Hayalad einenu, the boy is gone, va'ani, and I, ana ani va. And I, where will I go? What does it mean, I, where will I go? Says Rashi, on the evrach mitza'ar shel abba. Where will I flee from father's pain? What's he saying over here? Tell me, please, what is Reuven's concern? What is his primary issue right now? What will happen to you about his father's pain? No, that's not what he says. He's not worried about his father's pain. Read it again. He's not worried what will happen to Yosef in the pit. Leah says it exactly. Leah Watson on the nail. What's he worried about? V'ani ana ani ba. And I, Anna, where? Ani will I go. Where will I go from what? How will I be able to stand and watch my father crying in pain from the loss of his child? I'm going to feel terrible. So how am I going to handle watching my father in pain? He's not worried about Yosef being sold as a slave. He's not saying what will happen to the boy, who will tuck him into bed at night, who will feed him, who will make sure he's not being abused and being violently beaten or whatever as a slave. That's not what he's worried about. He's not worried about the fact that his father's going to cry. He's worried, I am emotionally insecure. I struggle with the pain of others. I'm emotionally sensitive. I'll say the positive. I'm emotionally sensitive. How will I handle watching my father cry in pain? That's what he's worried about. You understand what happened over here? He's still a very emotionally sensitive human being. But the 9 years of fasting and the 9 years of sackcloth and the 9 years of praying made him so spiritually focused on his own spiritual journey of growth, on his own spiritual self-purification, on his own self-elevation as a better human being, he became oblivious to the fact that his brother had been sold as a slave. He doesn't see the forest from the trees, if you want to say it that way. He doesn't see the fact that his brother's been sold as a slave. What he sees is, the boy is not here. The ani ba. And I, where will I go? That's what he's worried about. Do you understand the danger? There's a tremendous danger that happens sometimes when people become very spiritually focused. Obviously, it's very good to be on the spiritual journey. Reuven is a holy person. Let me be clear. I hope I'm not coming across negative to Reuven. Reuven was a holy Jew. He spent tremendous time in self-purification and becoming a better human being and working on himself. Of all the brothers, he was the only one that said, don't kill him. The Torah tells us he saved his life. So Reuven is not a selfish, I won't say the word he's selfish, but he was spiritually selfish. He's not selfish. He's very sensitive. But at the end of the day, he sees everything from the prism of how does it impact me? How will this affect my own spiritual status, my own spiritual standing, my own spiritual sense of fulfillment and achievement and greatness? How does this impact my spiritual level? When a child is crying in a pit, it's not the time to be fasting and praying and trying to do teshuvah for a sin that you did many years ago. The child is crying, forget yourself. Yeah, you need to do teshuvah. Yes, you need to become a better human being. But right now, there's a fire burning. Right now, you shouldn't be thinking about yourself. You should be thinking about the person in need. That's why he couldn't be the leader. That's why he couldn't be the leader. Because he didn't see the pain of the person as the pain of the other person. He saw the pain of the other person about how it impacts his own inner sensitivity, his own pain.
So you think people can see it and somebody else?
Yeah, there are people that are, as I said already, there are people that very deeply feel the pain of other people. They're very emotionally sensitive human beings. They so deeply, they walk into a room and they feel all the emotional undercurrents and all the friction and all the tension and all that they get wiped out. They leave an event, they're emotionally fatigued from all the emotions in the room. They feel they can feel, they're sitting in a conversation, they can feel how one person is looking daggers at the other. The person's oblivious. They have no idea. They're happy. They don't care. They don't feel anybody else but themselves. This other person feels the pain. He feels the sensitivity. He feels the friction. Feels it all. But it's all about, not always. In Reuven's case, the ani and I, where will I go? Yes, question. I have something else to say. Yes.
I have a question. In the past examples, he was a man of action. When his mother was not having children, he went for the
So Reuven he was a man of action. Very good. He found the fertility drug.
When he thought his mother was being disrespected, he moved to bed. So why didn't he pursue Yosef?
Very good question. Reuven was not afraid to do. Reuven went out to the field to find flowers for his mother's fertility. Reuven went into his stepmother's bedroom and moved the bed. Reuven also stops the brothers from killing Yosef. So Reuven didn't like just go pray. Reuven saved his life. But then what did Reuven do? He didn't finish the job. He did part of the job. He started, but he didn't focus on the result, on the outcome. He just, by the way, if you think about it, I'm just thinking out loud. Reuven got the flowers for his mother. Who ended up taking the flowers? Rachel. Reuven moved Yaakov's bed. What did it do for his mother? Nothing. Yaakov moved it back. Reuven is not a person that's effective. All of Reuven's actions are emotional actions. They're all, when you move your father's bed, is that going to really make your father love your mother more? No. If anything, the opposite. The kind of person that moves their father's bed is acting not out of logic, not out of a plan that has a focus on outcomes, but they're acting out of emotion. I didn't bring the text here. The reason why Reuven loses the firstborn, what does his father say to him? Is because you're like a raging river of water, right? That's what Yaakov says to son Reuven. You're all emotion. So yes, you have very good emotions. But sometimes in life, you got to stop and think and be strategic. And again, we're going to talk about Yehuda, the real leader of the Jewish people, next week. But today I'm focusing only on Reuven and giving Reuven the attention he deserves. Reuven acts out of emotion. Leadership can't be emotions. Reuven's emotions are wholly motivated. They have good motivations and good intentions and good purpose, but ineffective. I wasn't going to say this, but since you're already on this track, I'm going to talk about this next week. When the brothers are standing in front of Yosef, and Yosef says, one of your spies, right? And you're going to stay in prison. Your spies stay in prison. The brothers are talking amongst themselves. What do the brothers say to each other? This is our punishment. God is punishing us for the fact that we heard our brother crying in the pit and we ignored his cries, and now we're getting getting punished. And then Reuven pipes up, and what does Reuven say to his brothers? Reuven says to his brothers, "Didn't I tell you to listen to me and not to hurt the boy? And you didn't listen to me. Therefore, I find the exact text to go find the chapter. I told you so. And you didn't listen, right? That's what Reuven says. Why would you say that?
To try to get them to repent fully.
Exactly. So Reuben's intention is to get them to repent. But was he effective again? Like at this moment, it's all about emotions. There's no plan. What we're going to do, but the fact that right now this guy wants to imprison us and is accusing us of being spies. He doesn't think that way. He's all about the emotion for him. That's why I'll tell you another story. This is what I did want to say to you. When the brothers go back down, so they go to Egypt, Yosef says, you can't come back until you bring Binyamin. Hold on, is it clear before I go further to any questions? We're clear? So similar to the Noach story, amazing, never understood about Reuven. I'm glad you're enjoying it. A lot of stories about mental physical. Okay, something else? Okay, I'm looking at the comments. So, another story, all connected, because it's all the same person. When Yosef says to the brothers, I'm going to keep Shimon here as a hostage, and the rest of you go down to Israel, go bring the food, and then come back here with Binyamin. They come back to Yaakov and they say, we need to bring Yosef with us. Binyamin with us. And what does Yaakov say? No way. Right? So what does Reuven say to his father? Let me take Binyamin, and if I don't bring him back, Eshnei Bonai Tamis. You can kill two of my sons can die. Now, obviously, this is the stupidest argument I ever heard. And Yaakov thinks to himself, what kind of stupid argument is that? So how does it help me? So not only does Binyamin die, now two of my grandsons die. What kind of offer is that? So I ask you, what kind of offer is that? What is Reuven thinking? What is Reuven thinking when he tells his father, if I don't return Binyamin, two of my sons will die? That's a good deal. You can kill two of my sons. So I learned this evening an amazing Or HaChaim. The Or HaChaim says, why did Reuven offer two of his sons? I always thought 2 sons, one for Yosef, one for Binyamin. 2 sons. Why is he offering 2 sons? Offer 1 son. Binyamin, why 2 sons? Reuven had 4 sons. So Reuven thought to himself, listen to this calculation of a spiritual seeker. A person who only cares about their own spiritual status. But they sometimes lose touch of the bigger picture of the forest because they're so focused on the trees. So Reuven thinks to himself, and so let's plug this in. Reuven thinks to himself, I have 4 sons. So if 2 of my sons die, guess what? I still have 2 sons. I still have 2 sons. By Jewish law, to fulfill the mitzvah of children, you need to have a minimum of 2 children. Boy, a girl, 2 boys, whatever. So he thinks to himself, in Olam Haba, in the world to come, I want to be righteous so I can stay near my father in the world to come. I don't want to have any sins. So better, I'm not going to offer my future life for a guarantee for my brother. Unlike Yehuda, we'll talk about this next week. Yehuda says to his father that if I don't bring the boy back, what will happen? I'll have sinned against the world to come. Reuven is not willing to risk his Olam Haba, his future life, for his brother. That he's not willing to do. He's willing to give up 2 of his children's lives, but not to risk his Olam Haba, not to risk his life in the world to come. So he says to his father, I have 4 sons. 2 of them you can kill. I still have 2, so I'll still have fulfilled my obligation of having children, so I'll still be able to enter heaven properly without any sin. You hear this, Arach Chaim? This is the mentality of a person that's so spiritually sensitive that they become like oblivious, as I'll use the forest instead of the tree, oblivious to the purpose of spirituality. Become oblivious to the purpose of Torah, of mitzvot, of being a religious Jew, to help a person in need. They became so religious and so spiritually focused and so into my own fasting, my own spiritual penitence, my own spiritual status of not a fanatic. It becomes a focus on self. Some people are selfish materialistically. They don't care about anybody else. They want money. They want food. They want a fancy car. They'll screw anybody they can to make more money. We know that they're selfish. It's very easy when you see a guy that he'll do anything he can to make money or to enjoy life. We know he's selfish. But there could also be someone that doesn't care about money, doesn't care about fancy car, doesn't care about the fancy home. He sits in shul and he prays every single day for 2 hours, and he goes to every class. He's very spiritual. He's very spiritual. He's a righteous person. Righteous person. But he's still selfish. Spiritually. You don't understand? There are people that are selfish for spiritual gratification, for spiritual holiness. So for them, what matters, just like some people, all that to them is money. So they're selfish for money. Some people, all that matters to them is their own spiritual holiness, their own righteousness, their own how spiritual, how godly, how holy am I? So they don't care if someone else needs help, if they see a kid crying, they don't feel bad for the kid crying. You're disturbing my praying. That's all they care about. A kid could get hurt in shul on Shabbos. Let's just give an example. They're crying. So some people will say, oh, a kid's crying. Poor kid, is the kid okay? And some people are so spiritually focused. What will they say? Why is the kid crying? You're disturbing me from praying. Correct. Look at that. You understand? This is Reuven. What matters to Reuven is not his sons, their life. It's about his spiritual future. When Yosef is in the pit crying, please save my life, Reuven could have taken him out of the pit right then and there. He didn't. He didn't have the guts to do it in front of his brothers. So I'll come back later when no one's looking. But for now, I'm going to go pray. I'll come back to him. There's snakes and scorpions in the pit. There's bands of robbers, and they take him and there's a slit. I have to go pray. That was more important to him than the life of his brother. So Reuven was very holy and very spiritually sensitive and very emotionally sensitive. But he was too spiritual. He was too focused on his own spiritual growth to hear the cry of another child. And this, my friend, is the danger of being righteous. Imagine the rabbi saying, don't be too righteous. But as a rabbi, I'm telling you, sometimes don't be righteous. Sometimes people can be so righteous, so self-righteous, so self-obsessed spiritually, in holy things, in Jewish things, in praying and learning and studying. They're so self-obsessed in their own holiness, they don't hear the cry of a child. Which leads me to conclude with one of my father's favorite stories. What's one of my father's favorite stories? The Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, he had a house. He lived on the second floor of the house. On the first floor of the house, his son, the Mittler Rebbe, will become the second Chabad Rebbe, very, very, very big scholar, very, very deep Hasidic thinker, had just gotten married, and he was living on the first floor of the house. One night, it's late at night, Reuven was sleeping, and the Alter Rebbe is upstairs in his house on the second floor studying. And the Mittler Rebbe, the second Chabad Rebbe, who was not yet the Rebbe, he was still a young man, is also studying late at night on the first floor. The Mittler Rebbe had a baby. I'm not sure who the baby was. The baby was sleeping in the wagon, in the carriage, and the crib wasn't as secure as today with like this recall, whatever the crib was, a box or whatever the crib was, and the baby fell out of the crib. And the baby was crying. Now, even though the baby was crying on the first floor next to the Mittler Rebbe, because he wasn't the Rebbe yet, but the Mittler Rebbe was so deeply, deeply engrossed and so deeply focused on what he was meditating, he was learning, he was completely oblivious to everything happening around him. So focused he was on his learning, he didn't hear his own child cry. The Alter Rebbe, who was the Rebbe, was upstairs. He was also studying, but he heard the cry of his grandchild, of the baby. So he came downstairs. He saw that his son was in another world, deep in thought, completely oblivious to what's happening around him. So the Alter Rebbe picked up the child and soothed the child, put the baby back to sleep. The Mittler Rebbe didn't notice anything. The next day, the Alter Rebbe told his son, a person should never be so focused on their learning that they cannot hear the cry of a child. Understand? Should never be so focused on my own spirituality that I become oblivious to the cry of a child. I grew up on this story. Don't be oblivious. Don't be so holy that I can't hear someone else crying. And this is the story of Reuven. Reuven was a holy man. Very, very spiritual, very sensitive, very into others, how they impact him. But when he feels how they impact him. But sometimes we're so focused on the him, couldn't hear the cry of his brother in the pit. He was too busy fasting and praying. That's why he's not the leader of the Jewish people. For us, we need to take this to heart. Never be too holy that you don't have time or priority to hear the cry of a Jewish kid, of a Jew in pain, of a Jew in need. Yes, you have work to do, but that person's needs come before your own. Okay, my friends,